previous video, I sandwiched these different sheets of styrofoam together. They're 3 inches thick. I glued them together with spray foam, and now I'm going to go ahead and shape them. The shape that I'm going for here is I'm going to create something similar to this. I'm not attempting to exactly replicate this, but I want the overall size to be about the same. So I'm just putting this here, one, to show you, and then also I can kind of get a sense of how big I'm working. I'm not going to get into why I'm making this big. I'm making a work of art at the end, but I'm not going to go into that here. So I'm just going to show you how to shape the foam. That's my main point here. So the tools I have are different hand saws. There's one here. For what I'm doing now, to get straighter cuts, I like using a wider blade here. The difference between these two, which you can't see from over there, I'm sure, is that the teeth on the saw, they're both very sharp saws. This one works on the push. This one works on the pull. And that has to do with the orientation of the teeth. That's pretty technical. I'm not going to get into that in this video. I might want to make a more video, like kind of focusing in on these little details, a different video on some of these tools more. Something else I'm going to say is, after I cut that, I'm also planning on sanding down the surface I have a power sander set up over here. Okay, and then on that sander I have some sandpaper that goes on there. There's different grits of sandpaper, and what that means is how rough the surface is, how grainy the surface is. The rougher the surface is, the lower the number, the grit. It's called the grit. This one has 60 grit, so it's a very rough sandpaper. So when I'm sanding with the power sander here, sorry, there's a truck in the background. They're making some noise for a second, so you're going to have to bear with me now. Should be gone in a minute. So this here is a rough grit paper, and it'll remove a lot of material. With this particular sander, there's a little bag that I can screw on here to catch some of the dust. But what I like to do is I have a vacuum. I'm hoping that where you're working, you might have access to these. If not, do it outside and wear a mask. And I have my mask right here, put on my face to prevent breathing in dust. And also, I wear protective gloves to protect my hands so I don't cut my hand on accident. So this right here, this rough grit, there's holes in here now. So when I turn the vacuum on, it makes a lot of noise. It sucks air in through those holes and dust if I'm sanding with this. Okay. My plan is to demonstrate that after I do some of the rough cutting with the saw. So I'm not going to wear the mask. I would definitely wear this mask otherwise. I'm going to try to do it without it so you can hear me if I have anything to say while we're working here. All right. So I'm just going to kind of rotate this and keep sawing as I go. I don't think we necessarily have to keep the camera on the whole time again. We might cut out a few times. Maybe I'll do a couple cuts and then we'll stop it again and we'll start it again when I'm halfway, maybe a little more at the end. Okay, so here we go. So working with the styrofoam like this, you end up with a lot of leftover chunks of styrofoam. So I'm cutting off a lot of stuff. So I'll do a couple more cuts and maybe we can, at that point, pause and jump ahead. And there's a lot of dust, so the vacuum cleaner also comes in handy as you're working. If you have a vacuum nearby, you can kind of remove some of your mess as you go. This saw cuts on the push saw, so when I push into it, it cuts. If you're not really strong, I'd kind of, you don't have to fight it as much. Just kind of do more strokes. Take your time. I'm not using much strength right now. I'm just letting the saw do the work. You got to use a little bit of strength, but depending on how strong you are, get through it faster than that. Now flip it over to the other side. Doing nice long strokes helps. There we go. I'm going to work my way around this way. I'm cutting off all the corners kind of first. Record too long. We're getting there. It's still a little big. I'm almost tempted just to take this big side off just to get it down quick, you know. Did you? Go ahead. Alright, so I'm just going to clean up some of my mess here because I turned this on several times in the process of sawing because it makes a lot of dust. So I'm just going to do it real quick, just clean this up. And I just wanted to bring this over here. Hopefully it doesn't autofocus. So where I sawed, we got a really rough surface, okay? There's a couple places where I didn't saw as much. And it's important to have a very rough surface on this to have the cement mixture that I'm going to make later bond onto this. So what you do when you apply it is you force the mixture, and it's at a kind of a runny state, you force it into the grain here. So some of the surfaces don't have as much of a grit. The other thing I was looking for is if any of the surfaces aren't flat, which may or may not apply to what you're doing. And if any of them are cupping, for what I'm doing, it helps to make sure they're flat. And that's why I had the palm sander out. So I'm just going to hook that up just real quick just to show a demo of how to flatten. So this surface has a little bit of a cupping to it. I don't even know if you can see it in the video, but let me see if there's any other more obvious ones as I turn it around. For what I'm doing, having less cupping, which means kind of a curved surface, having less of that is better than having it more flat. It's not bad though. The saw I was using did a pretty good job. This one has a slight curve to it too. So I'm just going to sand this really quick. Then after I'm done with that, I'm going to take a wire brush and rough it up. And I make sure that all the surfaces have a nice rough texture, like this one here has a nice rough texture. So I want to make sure that they're all rough. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit it with the sander. Just on a couple planes, not going to do them all. You should wear a mask, and if you what helps me is I have this vacuum that sucks up the dust again. So. Again, the sandpaper on there was really rough, and it's so loud because the vacuum cleaner takes off a lot. So some areas where I sanded now, it's a little, I don't know if you can see this at all or not, it's a little smoother here than here. Might not communicate on camera, but where it's a little bit smoother, I'm just going to take my wire brush and just, it's got wire bristles on it. You can buy this at the hardware store, at either Lowe's or Home Depot, or even Walmart probably has wire brushes. And then just make sure that any surfaces are roughed up, because if it's smooth anywhere, it's not going to grab the cement mixture as well later on. So I'm just looking ahead to what I'm going to be doing. When I'm sculpting, and I'm actually shaping a form that's not so flat like this, so I'll use wire brushes a lot in the shaping process. It's pretty messy. Once again, you should wear a mask when you do it because it gets dust everywhere, but it removes a good amount of material relatively fast. And they come in different stiffnesses of bristles. This is pretty stiff. I have another brush that's even stiffer, so the stiffer it is, the more it removes. So I'm just looking for planes now that look like they could use a little roughing up. That's about all I'll do then. So then this will be ready to be, how do you put it? We're going to set it up so it can then be, then it can have the cement mixture applied to it. So I have to do something after this to set it up, which I'll demonstrate when this is done. For the most part, it looks pretty good. I'm seeing a couple planes here that look a little bit smooth, so I'm roughing those up. I'm getting close to being done from what I see here. Flip it around one more time. And then the other thing you should do is at the end, I'm not going to probably film it, just dust everything off, because if you don't, when you put the cement on later on, all these little fluffy, dusty particles which are getting all over my shirt here, they all end up in your cement mixture, and then it kind of makes a mess. So you really want to get that off of there. So I usually just take a little brush and dust it off, or take a vacuum and remove it. Yeah, this can get pretty messy, so I don't know if you can see I have a drop cloth down here. I have to vacuum my table. So this is probably one of the messier processes, is the shaping process. But this is critical because we're going to add our material on top of this. Alright? When later on I actually remove the styrofoam in some of the sculptures, not all of them. Some of them I remove the styrofoam from inside the sculpture.